Hey, virtual Jane Con. It's Eden, your friendly neighborhood author, coming to you from beautiful Bath. Because my favorite adaptation is Persuasion. And we're here to talk about the Battle of Unsung Austen adaptations. Now, we know people are ready to talk about uh, Pride and Prejudice 95 versus Pride and Prejudice 2005 all the time. But there's more than that in the world of Jane Austen. Jane Austen adaptations are practically a genre unto themselves. So I'm here with some of my favorite Austen loving mutuals on TikTok, and we're here to talk about our favorites, highly sung, less sung, and hopefully you come out of this conversation with a few new things to watch, and maybe a few new favorites of your own, and maybe a possible debate in the comments. We welcome it. Speaking of welcome, let me go to the person on my digital left and say hi to Rhonda. Rhonda, let us know who you are, where you're coming from, and what is your background?
Hello there. My name is Rhonda, and I am coming to you from the front garden of Barton Cottage, occupied by the Dashwood family. In real life, I am in Greenville, South Carolina, originally from the Pacific Northwest, and I'm very excited to talk about Austen adaptations.
And Kate, where are you coming from?
Yes, well, hi, I'm Kate. My virtual background is the ever iconic Pemberley, Mr. Darcy's estate, specifically from the 2005 version. But in real life, I'm coming from Washington, D.C., originally from Montana. So,
Northwest.
yeah, Northwest. Woo.
Shayna.
Hi, I'm Shayna Elizabeth Jackson, and I am in Colonel Brandon's library from the 2008 Sense and Sensibility, but really I am in Brooklyn, New York by way of Boston. 617 forever.
I went to school out that way, so.
Lovely.
And as mentioned, Eden Appiah-Kubi, your friendly neighborhood author. I am coming from the beautiful Bath, as I mentioned before, but in real life, I'm in the Maryland suburbs of Washington, D.C. Hi, neighbor. And I
Yippee.
am very excited to get this conversation going. So, the way this is going to work is that your lovely moderator, have selected several awards that our panelists will be submitting nominations for. And when they feel strongly about a nomination, they will state their case and I will affirm that with a flourish. Yes, that will be coming. So to start, round one, the Ellipsis Award for Best Austen Continuation. And I think we are starting with Shayna.
Lovely. So my nominee for this first round is Death Comes to Pemberley, specifically the miniseries that's based off the novel of the same name by P.D. James. And it came out, I want to say almost 10 years ago-ish.
Wow.
I wanted to talk about this miniseries in particular. It deals with Elizabeth Bennet and Darcy. It takes place 7 years after they're married and them settling into married life, but also it has to deal more specifically with her sister Lydia and her husband Wickham, who is stand accused of murdering someone. And I just love the themes of the injustices of the justice system. We see that played out century through century through century. And in Jane Austen's time in Regency England, this was no different. And the choices, sometimes difficult choices, people have to make or don't make, especially for the women in this story. And that's just something that spoke to me. And so I find myself going back to it from time to time. I think it's a really well done adaptation in it. Anna Maxwell Martin, I believe that is her. She plays she plays Elizabeth, which I mean I love her in anything. So but that is my nominee.
Very nice. I've heard the book, but I had not seen the series.
Yeah, I have not read the book, so I cannot say how faithful the miniseries is to the novel, but people who read the novel said it's really good.
And Rhonda, what would you like to say?
Yes, so my nominee for the Ellipsis Award is going to be the novel, actually, of Sanditon by Jane Austen and Another Lady. That is what it will say on the cover of the book, if you look at it. That Another Lady kind of remained anonymous for a little while because, kind of to honor Jane Austen. But we did find out that Another Lady is Marie Dobbs. So this was published in the 1970s, and it takes that fragment of Jane Austen's Sanditon that she wrote, what, like 11 chapters and some change before she passed away. And so lots of authors have continued Sanditon, like it's even been turned into a TV series that continued the story. This one is my favorite of all the Sanditons because to me it feels like I'm reading a seventh Jane Austen novel. Like I think it gets the language and the humor just about right, that I feel like I'm immersing myself once again in Jane Austen's world by reading it. So this would be my recommendation.
Humor is really hard, so
Yes.
Yeah.
I have to really look into that one. All right, Kate.
Yes, so my choice for Best Austen continuation are the Mr. Darcy and Miss Tilney mysteries, specifically the first book, The Murder of Mr. Wickham. I can't, it's not going to show up. Kind of. Okay. And I would like to state my case for this one. So,
Kate is stating her case.
and I was
Flourish.
told to have my own Jane Austen totem. So I've got my Jane prayer candle that I'm lighting for this one.
I
Okay.
love the Saint Halo.
So the Mr. Darcy and Miss Tilney mysteries, I actually just finished book 5, which was released earlier this month. Take place are a series of murder mysteries taking place across all of Austen's novels, and our primary detectives are the son of Elizabeth and Mr. Darcy and the daughter of Catherine and Mr. Tilney. And they have a romance of their own over the course of several novels. What I love about The Murder of Mr. Wickham, the first book in particular, is that it combines characters from all of Jane Austen's novels in one country manor mystery. Um, and I think you can guess from the title who the victim is in that. But I think what makes this unique in terms of an Austen continuation is also that it not just takes characters from all of Austen's novels, but doesn't set them in the same time gap from the events of their novels. Clearly, it's taking place a couple decades after Northanger Abbey and Pride and Prejudice, but then it's taking place only a few years after Persuasion in Mansfield Park, and only about 8 months, I think, after the events of Sense and Sensibility. And it's really fun to see how these characters at various points in their lives interact, and also how spreading those stories over the course of a few decades can have an impact on this story in particular. So I think it makes it really unique in terms of an Austen continuation, and I also think it does an excellent job of still capturing the heart and wit and vibe of Jane Austen while putting it in a very different genre. So that is my case for the Mr. Darcy and Miss Tilney mysteries.
And that's a hearty recommendation after five books. So,
I love them
so
all. I have them all on pre-order whenever one comes out about every June. So
Oh,
trying to keep that up because this last one ended on cliffhanger. So
ooh.
ooh.
Okay, well, we're going to go to round two, the Spinning Portal Award for Best Austen Alternative Universe. And let's see. I think we'll start with you, Kate.
okay. So my choice for Austen Alternative Universe is going to be Bride and Prejudice. So I did a project a few years ago where I watched every Austen adaptation ever, or endeavored to. Hopefully, didn't miss too many. And one of the best surprises of that project was discovering all the incredible Bollywood adaptations of Austen's work. Bride and Prejudice is probably the most well known because it presents a cross cultural romance between the Lizzie and Darcy analogs. I think it is so fun to put Austen's novels in a musical setting, No Life Without Wife. I think it's incredibly well cast, particularly Aishwarya Rai as the Elizabeth analog. And I think it's one of the things I love about these Bollywood adaptations is also I think it's really cool to take Jane Austen's work and put it in a different cultural context. And I think Bride and Prejudice does that in a really excellent way.
Before you mentioned it, I didn't realize that it was a full musical. I thought it would had like a number or two, but
Yeah, no.
It's a full
Quite a
musical.
few.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's really good. And the actor who played the analog to Mr. Collins in the director's, and her name is escaping me, the director's commentary, she had said that he had told her, "You're making me look too ugly. I'm actually trying to find a wife." But he got married shortly after Bride and Prejudice came out. So,
I love that. I love
yeah.
that fun fact.
Well, Shayna, since you just had some ideas, do you have a spinning portal for us?
Yes, and my nominee for this round is Miss Austen Regrets, which came out in 2007, and it's a newer piece. It's about Jane Austen in the later years of her life. Olivia Williams, who plays Austen, and who coincidentally enough, she played Jane Fairfax in the 1996 adaptation of Emma with Kate Beckinsale and Mark Strong. But she plays an older Mrs. Bennet in this adaptation, and it's a reflection, if you will, on her life and the choices that she made and the choices that she didn't make, and in the with the backdrop of her niece Fanny, her sister Cassandra, and Fanny's uncle, with which they have a shared history. And what I love about this is that they take, or the writer of this piece, they took letters, the letters that survived, from that, Jane, that she wrote to her sister, that she wrote to family members, things of that nature, and inserted pieces of her letters into the script itself, which I thought was really clever. I thought that was really smart. And I love that this is a story that's focused on the woman behind Elizabeth Bennet, behind Anne and Elliot, behind Darcy, behind all of these amazing characters that I feel as though no one but her could have written. And it was written by this woman who, by all accounts, she she was not a rich woman, but she had such a rich imagination, and she knew what to do with it. But it's also just reflective of the fact that she still wasn't as appreciated as she should have been. Then it's only now that we're still 200 years later, we're still appreciating her works, and that's my nomination.
It's incredible to think of doing anything that could last 200 years,
Yeah,
and just being an ordinary person, just like not knowing and having the passion for the work to carry you through.
exactly. Just wonderful.
Rhonda, would you like to give us your spinning portal?
Yes. So my nomination for the Spinning Portal Award is going to be Heartstone by L. Catherine White. And I would like to state my case.
She is stating her case.
So I also have Jane Austen of sorts joining me to support my case for this novel. So you may notice, if you can see this at all, there is a dragon on this book cover. And you might be thinking, what do dragons have to do with Jane Austen? Is that what you were thinking?
I
You
was
maybe
thinking that.
was. Good. So let me tell you. So now I love, love when an AU Austen retelling doesn't just transport the story and the characters into a new setting, but also adapts the social commentary of Austen's original works. Because, of course, we know her works are full of satire and commentary on the conditions socially and politically of the day that she lived in, right? So one approach that I think we see a lot in retellings that are set like in modern times is that you transpose the plot of the original onto the social and political issues that are relevant at the time that you're setting your retelling. So, like our panel host did this with both of her Austen retellings, and we see this with a lot of other retellings like Pride and Protest, Unmarriageable are a couple of really good examples. So you have a retelling that's set in a society very different from Austen's, very different gender politics and social norms. So the challenge then is how you translate the social and political elements into a different social context. So then on top of that, not only do we have a different social context, we have a different world. Like this is an epic high fantasy world that we have translated the plot of Pride and Prejudice into, and there's dragons. So I think that when you have set an Austen story in a fantastical setting, it's a bigger challenge, or maybe a different challenge to translate the social commentary into that setting. So, a speculative setting, I think that Pride and Prejudice and Zombies is a great example of this because you're able to use this very visceral fantasy element of these flesh-eating monsters to like make it very real, like the stakes that the Bennet sisters are facing if they don't find suitable matches, right? So with Hearthstone, I came into this expecting that we would have um some kind of translation of the political and social commentary into the fantasy world, but I didn't know what that would look like.
Mm.
So it did take me a little while to figure out what exactly the author was doing. And once I figured it out, I was like, this is so brilliant. This is so great. So what it's actually doing is that you're getting like this fun fantasy setting. You're getting a Mr. Darcy who rides a dragon. Like, who doesn't want to see that? But as you get deeper into it, so many of like the descriptors and just the Elizabeth character's perspective on events, it's kind of subtly deconstructing some of those like really cliche hyper masculinized tropes that we see in epic high fantasy, such as The Lord of the Rings or A Song of Ice and Fire, or more egregiously in works that are uncreatively derivative of those bigger works. So, I mean, this is epic fantasy is can be a very like self-serious genre, right? Like it has these kind of ridiculous rules that can't be broken. And Hearthstone takes those rules, takes those tropes, and just kind of subtly undermines them in a really wonderful way. And so you get this fun fantasy retelling of Pride and Prejudice with dragons, but then you also get like a subtle send up of epic fantasy. So I feel like there's a lot of words. But
Well,
then
I mean, a soul
I
send-up
mean,
is always a lot of fun.
Mr.
Like,
Darcy riding a dragon. Like,
mhm.
do you need to know anything else?
Wonderful. So round three, the Upside Down Mirror Award for Best New Point of View. Um, who am I? Shayla.
Lovely. So my nominee for this third round is The Other Bennet Sister, which came out stateside April-ish, May, I believe. So I need to preface this by saying I think I'm the only person stateside who did not stream it somewhere months in advance where I feel as though everyone else did. I feel as though I'm kind of late to the game. I think am the only person that did not upgrade my BritBox subscription so I can watch it all in one go. So I've been watching it episode by episode. And it's my nomination, and I don't say this lightly, but I think this is probably one of the better period dramas I've seen in a good while. What I love about this, first of all, the acting is phenomenal. The costumes, the scenery, it's just it's all there. It all works. But it's how it makes me feel afterwards. Do I find myself thinking about it after the fact? And we have this character, Mary, who's been basically neglected. You know, her sisters, they've been they're in their own little world. You have Lizzie and Jane, and you have Kitty and Lydia, and it's just Mary, and it's basically her time to shine, to realize her self-worth. And as someone who is, for myself, speaking personally, someone who's been othered, if you will, throughout my life because of how I look and because I love Jane Austen, because I love period dramas, that I've been made to feel different. I've been made to feel that I don't belong. This is just confirmation that no, I do belong, and I am worthy. And I love that Mary realizes that about herself. So that's my nomination. 1,000%.
I've heard so many good things, and so your testimony is adding to it. Rhonda?
So, my nomination for the Upside Down Mirror Award is actually a work written by our panel host, Eden Appiah-Kubi's Her Own Happiness, which is a modern day retelling of Emma. Now, if you know Eden's views on the character Emma Woodhouse, you might be surprised that she chose to do an Emma retelling because she's not a fan of Emma Woodhouse as a character.
Tomato, tomato, tomato.
So, what she has brilliantly done is she has told the story from the point of view of the Harriet Smith character. So, from Harriet's point of view, or Maya, who's the main character, from her point of view, this is a story of her returning to her hometown and her deep friendship with her best friend Aunt, who, they've always been very good friends, but there's never been anything romantic. So, but that kind of starts to change. So he is our Robert Martin character, and we get some of his point of view as well, which is lovely. So as this friendship is deepening and turning into something more, Maya is also being drawn into the orbit of this. She's like a socialite influencer kind of figure who, appears very glamorous and at least at first seems like she really wants to help Maya. But Maya kind of slowly realizes that this is like not a very good relationship. Like this is kind of a toxic circle to be in. And so it's kind of finding herself through that experience and learning to kind of stand up for herself and also this wonderful romance with her best friend. So it was wonderful to read and made even more so because I know the author, so
Oh,
everyone should read it.
oh, thank you so much. That really
Whoop,
touches my
whoop.
heart. Go, go. I can't wait. Okay, you gotta go before I blush anymore.
That's a hard one to follow, but my choice is another Bennet sister, but not the other Bennet sister. The year was 2012. I think a lot of us Austen fans were obsessed with a little web series called The Lizzie Bennet Diaries. But my choice for other point of view is that at that same time, there was airing Lydia Bennet's video diaries as a companion to that piece. I think that Mary Kate Wiles' portrayal of Lydia is my favorite Lydia Bennet of any Pride and Prejudice adaptation, in no small part because of her own video vlogs, which have a very different flavor than Lizzie's video diaries. I think it really deepens the character. It shows us kind of another side of Lydia, shows us kind of how much she longs to be friends with her sisters and break into that Lizzie Jane dynamic, and how much she is really longing for attention and how that kind of leads her down this path with Wickham. And I also think really deepens that relationship with Wickham and contextualizes it. And I think, again, Mary Kate Wiles is just such an incredible Lydia and does such an amazing job. So that is my choice for other Austen POV.
Mary Kate Wiles won my Lydia bracket when I did the
As well,
Pride and
she
Prejudice
should.
All-Star
Yes.
cast.
And that version of Lydia was very influential in how I decided to write my Lydia character in the Bennet women, my first novel, because I was just sort of like, oh right, she's just a girl. She's just a young person with lust for life. There's nothing wrong with that. It's not like Lizzie's, sort of jadedism is the only way to see the world. There are, it's just that her enthusiasm is misplaced, but it's not wrong. Um, and so, I think that really got that, All right. Moving on, we're going to do round four. By the round that inspired this whole panel, the Satin Pillow Award for most slept on Austen adaptation.
I think this is also the best award name, honestly.
Thank you. Well, Rhonda, since would you mind taking the first step?
Oh, I would be happy to. So my nomination for the Satin Pillow Award is the Kate Morland Chronicles. So this is a web series that I believe came out in maybe 2016, 2017, somewhere in there. And it was part of that wave of web series adaptations of classic novels that we saw come out after the Lizzie Bennet Diaries. So this is obviously an adaptation of Northanger Abbey, and our Catherine Morland goes by Kate, and she is like aged up a little bit. I think she's like in her early to mid 20s. And what I think is like a brilliant piece of adaptation here is that she is an entertainment journalist and also a huge fangirl of like every big media franchise you can think of. But her absolute favorite TV series of all time is The Mysteries of Udolpho. And she has a huge crush on the main actor from that TV series, and that actor is Henry Tilney. So, because she's an entertainment journalist, she gets to meet him, and it's what I love about this series is like the all of the like little parallels that they find to adapt the different plot points from Northanger Abbey into the modern setting. So it's really fun. There's a lot of humor. It's like like, I don't mean this in a bad way. You can tell that it had a low budget, but they did a lot with the budget that they had, and it's very charming. So
There's something impressive about those like mid 2000s web series that just like made a dollar holler and
yeah.
like however it's all on the screen. But I think about like the Scar Kick musicals. It's sort of like those were definitely like fun group projects, but they
Mhm.
were very charming and like their homespunness. So Kate, I'll go next to you.
Yeah. So my choice for this category is Fire Island. This was, I think, slept on because it was a victim of the pandemic's kind of straight to streaming model. So it went straight to Hulu back in the summer of, I think, 2021. But this is a queer adaptation of Pride and Prejudice, written and starred in by Joel Kim Booster. And what I love about this one is that it's just so clear that he has such a love for the source material. Again, I love kind of how you were saying with your adaptation, Rhonda, that there I love seeing how many of the details from the book that he's able to implement in a very different context. For one, he actually includes all five Bennet sisters, which not a lot of, you know, uh, modern adaptations do, and does a great job at translating their personalities to the modern context, particularly since they're all gay men rather than young women in the Regency era. It also just serves as an amazing rom com on its own. The chemistry between Joel Kim Booster as the Lizzie analog and Conrad Ricamora as the Darcy analog, it's just like off the charts. It's a hilarious adaptation, and it is just like a really fun watch.
I thought the different class markers within this particular world were so interesting. It's like the costuming and where people lived and or where people were staying and how they were getting there even you know it was all like all the little details like you were saying that really like picked out all the things that Jane Austen was trying to say about her time. It was so cleverly done. So Shayna.
Lovely. So my nomination is the 1980 adaptation of Pride and Prejudice. And I feel like in the 70s and 80s, the BBC was on a Jane Austen kick. There was the
Never
71
got off of
Emma.
it, I don't think. They're
I'm
still on
sorry.
a Jane Austen kick.
Yeah. Yeah, so but as I said, my nomination is the 1980 adaptation, and I feel as though whenever folks talk about Pride and Prejudice adaptations, they either talk about the 1995 version or the 2005 version. And I rarely hear people talk about the 1980 version. I myself didn't know about it until a few years back, and when I saw it's a mini series. I believe it's five or six episodes. I was just struck by how well done it was. The costumes felt right. It was beautifully shot. And for me, I love the fact that this is the most faithful adaptation to the novel itself. Obviously, faithfulness to novels, it's important. But it's not the end all be all. But having said that, I love the fact that this is the most faithful to the novel. And whenever I think about what Elizabeth Bennet would have looked like. When I close my eyes and I imagine what Elizabeth looked like, I think of Elizabeth Garvey, who played Elizabeth Bennet in this adaptation, and David Rentoul, who played Darcy, just this tall, stoic man, and you have to flesh out his feelings. I think he played that superbly, and I love the interactions with all the actors. I think they're really well cast. And again, it has such a special place in my heart because I hear so little people talk about it, and it's like this is pretty damn good, and it's pretty damn funny as well. I didn't expect to laugh at as much with this adaptation, but I thought it was really well done, and I'm always going to recommend this adaptation to folks when they ask me, oh, well, which adaptation should I watch? Obviously, I'm going to recommend the 2005. Obviously, I'm going to recommend the 1995, but I'm also going to say, just promise me you'll watch the 1980 version as well. It's good, trust me.
Is that another one that's on BritBox? Or
Yes, yes, it is. It is. It's probably on other streaming services, but I know for a fact it's on BritBox.
cool, cool. All right. We've reached our last category.
Whoop,
And we're going
whoop.
to straighten up, fix our posture, our straps that keep slipping down, and assign a winner to the golden bonnet of awesomeness and Austen adaptation. Now, most of our picks have been fairly unsung or not as well known. These are just your favorites. You can just share your favorite Austen adaptation anytime, anywhere, sung or unsung. We're just here to have fun. Um, and I'll start with, well, let's go right back around with you, Shayna.
Lovely. So my nomination for this last round is the 2005 adaptation of Pride and Prejudice, and I would like to state my case.
He's stating her case.
I have it's not going to show well, but you have to believe me. I have a picture of Jane Austen that I have not yet framed, but it doesn't show well on this. But I assure you, it's right here beside my bed for moral support. I also have, I don't know if you can really see it, but the CD for the 2005 soundtrack of Pride and Prejudice. And as I said earlier, with Jane Austen adaptations, of course, you're expecting a level of adaptation that you recognize Jane Austen immediately. You know, some judge some things here and there, but the spirit of Austen is still there. And it's one of the things that I love about the 2005 adaptation of Pride and Prejudice. It's not the most accurate out of all the adaptations. It doesn't have Colin Firth jumping into a lake. It does have the hand flex, which is pretty damn good, but it doesn't have Colin jumping into a lake. But for me, it's how it makes me feel after the fact. And every single time I watch it every year. And for me, it it takes it there. For some people, the 1995 version, it takes it there for them. For some, the 1980 version takes it there for them. For me, it is this adaptation, and I think it starts with the casting and Keira Knightley and Matthew McFadden, which, side note, he did an interview once stating that he didn't think he didn't do a good job of Darcy. And it's like, I beg to differ, sir, but I digress. But these two just being able to play off each other, and Donald Sutherland as Mr. Bennet, and I've gone on record saying I think Mr. Bennet is a deadbeat, and I know some folks had problems with his turn of Mr. Bennet, but I loved it. I love Mrs. Bennet. I love Kitty. All the actors that were brought in for this were just superb, and it's set their acting is set against the backdrop of this beautiful cinematography that you see from the very first shot of the film. And there are just these moments where Jane, forgive me, Lizzie, she has her dream sequence and she's up on that mountain, and it's just the camera is just tracking her. It is just so beautifully shot. And the soundtrack fits so perfectly in this adaptation, and I think that's equally important. So you have the acting is there, the cinematography is there, the soundtrack is there, the spirit of Austen, it is there from the very very first shot until the last shot. And I know the ending here in America was different from the one in the UK, but I love both equally, and it speaks to me on a personal level. Every time I even think about it, even now, just talking about it, again, w along with the other Bennett sister, it reaffirms that I belong in this community. And I get that every single time whenever I watch this adaptation of Pride and Prejudice.
Oh, it's gorgeous.
Thank you. I'm gonna get a little emotional.
I think that this scene at the Netherfield ball where they're dancing and like glaring at each other and
Yes.
everybody else disappears and it's
Disappears.
just
Oh,
them
smart.
kills every time.
Smart.
Yeah.
Smart.
Mm.
Especially Bingley when excuse me, is walking behind Jane and like he touches a bit of her skirt. It's like, oh, this
The
poor
lettering.
puppy.
The single tracking shot through the ballroom is so pretty.
Yes, I
Yeah,
love that. And the whole world of you really got the social world of the story in just like a few minutes.
it's wonderful.
Now I want to watch it again.
Yeah, you should.
I watch it like once a month, but
Okay, Kate.
Yes, so my choice, I am forever an Emma girly, and I can't agree more with Shayna when I say that for me, the sign of the best Austen adaptation is not necessarily one that is letter perfect to the story, but rather one that makes me feel, in particular, the way I felt when I read the book. So, because Emma is my favorite novel, my favorite adaptation of it is Emma 2020. Uh, that one did come out in theaters just before the pandemic. Last movie I saw in theaters, actually, before the
same,
pandemic.
Same,
same.
same.
um, and for me, like what really brings the world of Highbury to life is Autumn de Wilde's direction. It is so aesthetically perfect to what I pictured when I read the book. It's this gorgeous kind of candy colored pastel world that really fits Emma's privileged perspective. I think Isabel Waller-Bridge, sister to Phoebe, her score completes the picture, and then the casting is just phenomenal. Anya Taylor-Joy, I think, is not afraid to give her Emma an edge, which is my biggest critique for a lot of Emma adaptations, is they try and soften Emma's harshness, which I think it does a disservice to who I consider to be literature's first anti-heroine. Uh, and I also think they did a great job casting Johnny Flynn as Mr. Knightley. A
Mhm.
lot of people said he was too young when he was cast, when in fact he is quite literally, he was the same age as Knightley in the book when he portrayed Mr. Knightley, I think 36, 37. And it's a very similar age gap because I think Anya was like 23 when she played the role. So a little bit older than Emma in the book, but not much. And I think where a lot of Emma adaptations go wrong is in playing up that age gap, making it weird because it is quite an extensive age gap. And this one, I think, showed a really different side of it, that they come off as equals. They've got more
Um,
banter, less condescension than some Mr. Knightleys. It's much more on an equal footing. And it is just and I mean everything about it. It's just my perfect Austen adaptation.
he never felt like her dad, which is
Yes.
one of the things that
So
usually bothers
important.
me.
Has anyone seen the 1971 version
Oh
of?
my God, I can't even talk about that one. Oh, he's so creepy. Such a creepy Knightley.
And the gentleman who played Emma's father looked old enough to be her grandfather. So,
Well, I think that is kind of like accurate to the book that like Mr. White
yeah,
was married very late in life.
very late. Yeah,
But yeah, that is
it's
still weird.
still
It's so weird.
a little. I get it, but like just seeing them three together is like, okay, okay,
Father,
family.
father, daughter, rather than.
I have
Yeah.
to add one more thing I love about Emma 2020 is that you get a one brief scene with her sister and her sister's family and all
Mm,
and you see how like overwhelming and untidy that Emma finds the whole business of actually being married. So like she much prefers arranging things.
Mm.
And I feel like that's just such an insight into her character in general, and just sort of like and how the business of actually being married is a much messier affair than she could ever imagine, really. But like trying to connect people, like that's simple.
I also
I
love the little moment between Emma and John Knightley that we get in that scene where like
mm.
they just make eye contact and
Contact.
both
Yeah.
know like
Mhm.
I
Yeah.
guess this is it.
Yeah.
John Knightley is such an underrated character. But one
I love John Knightley.
thing about Emma's sister is I remember when I saw Emma 2020, I tweeted that the actress who plays her sister in Emma 2020 plays Anya Taylor-Joy's mother in Queen's Gambit. And I was like, they
Oh,
were like 1 year apart. I was like, damn, the
Oh.
pandemic was really hard on everyone. And only two people liked that tweet. It was my mom and the actress that played her.
Seriously?
Yeah, I
Wow.
tagged her. So she
that's
thought,
Okay.
That's really funny.
Love that. She
Okay.
needs to do another Austen adaptation, like
Yes. I
so
want
today.
to
does
see her
Autumn.
Northanger.
Autumn de Wilde needs
Mm.
to do another one.
yeah.
Rhonda, take us home.
Oh, it's my turn. Okay. My nomination for the Golden Bonnet Award, which, by the way, a golden bonnet would be really heavy. Anyway, so my nominee is Love and Friendship, a film from 2016, directed by Whit Stillman and starring Kate Beckinsale as Lady Susan Vernon. So this is actually an adaptation of the story Lady Susan. Um, Love and Friendship is a title that's actually taken from a different Austen work, but they're both works that she wrote very, very young. I think she wrote Lady Susan when she was like 18, 19-ish. And she wrote it in the form of letters written between characters. And I love that a lot of Austen's early works were written in this epistolary format. Um, Unfortunately, letters are not very cinematic. Like they're hard to put on film. I have a whole thing about how Captain Wentworth's letter in Persuasion has never been put on film in a satisfying way, in my opinion, but I digress. But what's great about Love and Friendship is that Whit Stillman was somehow able to take these letters and turn them into a cohesive narrative film. So Lady Susan, who I mentioned, is played by Kate Beckinsale. She is delightfully evil. She is a widow with no fortune, and so she relies on family members and sometimes friends to house her. Like she doesn't have a place to live, and so she just travels around to different people's houses to stay with them for extended periods of time. And then she also, uh, you get the feeling that her family doesn't find her pleasant to be around. So she kind of has to use like some manipulation and coercion to kind of bend them to her will. But in her mind, her manipulations are entirely justified, which I think is like the mark of like a truly great, manipulative character is that they're like, well, hello. Um, and then family members at her disposal for said manipulations include her 16-year-old daughter, who is now conveniently of marriageable age. So Lady Susan intends to use her as a means of um, ensuring her own financial and societal standing. That's kind of the premise of the story here. But it's really just like a like very like satirical comedic look at Georgian society through this work that Jane Austen gave us when she was a very young adult. And an advantage of telling the story through film is that rather than the original work's seemingly hasty author's note at the end that wraps up everyone's story, we get a seamless conclusion that is satisfying for every character. Like every character gets exactly what you hope they do. Everyone gets what they deserve, including Lady Susan herself. She gets exactly what she deserves. But we feel like she's going to be okay,
Mhm.
which is what we like. She's terrible, but you still want her to be okay. Like,
She's
Yeah.
terrible, but most of everyone else isn't great. So we're like, go ahead and
yeah.
take our money. Um,
Mm.
Yeah, they're not great either. They're just rich. So,
yeah.
Yep.
So
And
I
isn't
love Love and
Stephen Fry in
Friendship.
that?
what's that?
Stephen Fry, he's in that.
Yes,
Yeah.
yes. Who he plays her brother-in-law, I believe.
No, I
Or,
think
oh
he
no,
He
he
her
plays
normally
the
employs
husband of
somebody
the
Her
who's
husband
American.
of
her
her
Yeah.
best
a
husband.
friend.
Yes,
husband
yes,
who
yes.
is too old to be manageable,
He's
too
both too
young to
young to
Too
die.
young
die.
to die. Yes. Who keeps threatening to ship his wife off to
To
America.
America. Yeah. It's like, oh, hi, Stephen Fry.
Right.
Yeah, Kate Beckinsale is marvelous in that. She's positively feline, and I love what Stillman I also he did like Damsels in Distress. So he seems to know this like world rarefied era of like wealthy, waspy people and how to mock them very
Yeah.
incisively, without it being too deep, without start thinking about like, generational wealth or anything. It's like just enough mocking to keep us and the pace of the story is really good. Like, it's adapted from novella, so we're moving quick.
Yes.
Mhm.
And I will always be grateful for it because I read Lady Susan to be ready for watch Ladies to watch Love and Friendship, and now it's one of my favorites Austen
Mm.
works in general.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yes. I love it.
Well, that was our awards, folks. I'm sure you have opinions, so please shout out. Would you have a nomination for your own for each of our categories? Ellipsis Award, Spinning Portal, Upside Down Mirror, Satin Pillow, or Golden Bonnet? Shout your nominations, and we are not just looking for we talk about web, screen, and book, but we know there's musicals. We know there are whole TikTok accounts that are acting out different ways of interpreting Austen, and there's comic books and all sorts of other things. If you have a great adaptation, we want to hear about it. And until then, until your rewatch, have a great virtual Jane Con, and we'll see you soon.
Bye.
Hi.